By the way, those who follow the Palestinian, in all the previous wars I was in Gaza, I was reporting on what was happening in Gaza, and finally we tried to look at Gaza from the outside and report on what was happening in Gaza, like many of our colleagues. And where we were, for example, if you are in Sderot. I went to Sderot once. I mean, one day I did a live broadcast just from Sderot in a bulletproof vest and helmet. Then I came back. Because in fact, this was talked about a lot on social media. I mean, they said, why can't this man go to where the missiles are coming from? Are you scared or something like that? People wrote to me, are you scared? Why are you broadcasting on TV? Why did you go to the South Lebanon side, to the North Line, to Haifa, etc.? I said, yes, I am scared. Why am I scared? Because a Hamas rocket, which has a 1 in 1,000 chance of falling in the Iron Dome, falls in Sderot, where the journalists are as a result of an Israeli provocation. And just imagine, Mehmet Akif Ersoy is injured by a rocket fired by Hamas. What a ridiculous thing. Let's imagine that the news came out like this. When you were in Gaza, I thought that every scream, every statement in Gaza, or every statement about our colleagues in Gaza, or about the fact that many journalists lost their lives there was insufficient. But in the broadcast we made from inside Israel, if it was specifically about these rockets, that is, if it was about rockets falling and about to fall, I thought it was useful for something else. So it was a boring period for me, let me put it that way. Because you and I are both doing this job, you go to the field. For example, if, God forbid, there was an incident in Istanbul, all the press would go there. Why? Because it would be an extraordinary situation. If a rocket falls in Israel, all the media, hundreds of people go there. Why? Because it is an extraordinary situation. Rockets don't fall there. But in Gaza, there's intense bombardment, hundreds of stories. Not a single journalist falls on one story. I mean, there's one journalist for every 100 stories. So this leaves us with a missing key piece, professionally as well. It's not our preference. It's a situation forced upon us by Israel. You've probably tried to go to Gaza. I've tried to go to Gaza as well. Many of my colleagues, even those with zero training, attempted to go to Gaza. But Israel didn't allow it and we couldn't go. That's why it was different. In my last attempt, I can't say there was an unforgettable incident, but one of the striking topics was the tanks in the Golan. I'm not sure how much attention it got on social media, couldn't estimate. But Israeli authorities called us, said it was a crime, that we couldn't do it, that it could be a problem. We even contacted the legal department. They called our organization and said that if we published the footage, I could be detained here, I could be held. There are rumors about such things. Should we be careful? What is the legal dimension? They made us sign a paper. We talked about whether we should look at that paper. Nothing like that happened, but the Israeli soldiers came and told us that this couldn't be done, that it couldn't be published, that the area was a military zone, that we couldn't go there. This was very striking to me. For example, while you were telling us that the 4-kilometer line in the northern region above, the villages were evacuated and declared a military zone, we went there. We saw the barrels pointed towards Israel in the Golan, tanks, tens, hundreds of tanks, all scrapped. There is a shooting structure at ground zero. We didn't know that when we went there. We passed through military checkpoints with a salute, for example. For instance, they have soldiers, entry is prohibited there, civilians are not allowed. We greeted them, passed through, no one asked us who we were, why we were entering. We went in, filmed, then they came and took us out from there. We went to the Lebanese borderline, we went into mined areas, and we filmed all of this, by the way. I mean, they blocked the road, for example, they poured soil on the road. You can go up to there, but you can't cross the rest. I have an honest friend living there on the border. It's a mined area. If I were alone, I couldn't have entered. I went, it was closed off, it said mined area. There were signs warning about dangerous entry. I said, let's not go, you know. But we said, yeah, we played here a lot, come on. There's nothing here, I said. He let us in there. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have gone in. He let us in. At a few spots, he said, walk by stepping on the rocks. I said, are you serious? Let's not get into trouble. We forgot even to wear steel vests and helmets. Then we went there, we shot. At the Lebanese border, he told me that I can't enter here. I mean, if I get caught, there will be a problem. I went there with my cameraman friend. I went in with Emre. We were moving forward. I said, are you sure we're going to enter here? But he said, come on. He said nothing would happen. I went in, we were driving, there was no one there. Not a soul, not a single car. The road is completely evacuated. Lebanon, Hezbollah on our right. Our left side is Israel. We are driving right in the middle, in the buffer zone, and mined land is written on both sides on the signs and so on. We went, we traveled around, we came back, we looked at what had been done, we looked at whether the villages had really been evacuated, and once again we saw this. In other words, the field is not like what we see on social media and what is described in the news. It may be necessary to go there even to understand October 7th, but where we went after seeing it on the news, it was a military zone that we could never enter. We thought it was a place where tanks and the Israeli army were taking intense security measures. What we saw was a completely different scene. Was it surprising? Not at all. On the way back, we stopped by a Muslim neighborhood in Haifa. The call to prayer was being called. Muslims were praying in the mosque because they are Palestinian Arabs. Arabs we call the 48 Arabs. There were children waiting for their fathers. They came there on an electric motorcycle, an electric bicycle, whatever, and they hung an Israeli flag on the back. Palestinian children, Arab and Muslim children. We filmed them. I went and chatted with their fathers and children. I said to the children, for example, I said, "Do you know there is a war in Gaza?" They said, "We know. They attacked Israel and now they are paying for it. They will pay for it. But aren't you afraid? You know, the growth of the war, the repercussions." No, we are not afraid. Israel is a strong country and it will protect us. Is that what you think? Are you Muslims? We are Muslims, Palestinians. God bless Israel. I'm summarizing the interview. I said, wow. Yesterday, I went to a school to give an interview, high school students. I just told them this about many issues, including the boycott. I said, I'm sending my son to a school. This is why I'm sending my son to school. You know, they can take your children and turn them into something completely different. It was unbelievable for me, for example. That scene I encountered with Israel. I knew it, but on that level, the sentences are really unbelievable. It's striking and it's very powerful, and they say it with conviction, and they chant slogans, and they wave Israeli flags. Palestinians in the occupied territories, they are now under Israeli population, under Israeli influence. They took their children and they were able to bring this out of them. This is the most fundamental issue. I mean, I told you about the boycott, a candle lighting incident. I mean, during the Vietnam War, during the White War in America, an activist would go and light candles there every day. My father texted me this. I argued with my father one day about the boycott. Every day he goes and lights candles. A journalist came to him and said, I say, what good is the boycott? And so on. My father sent me a message saying, you delete that journalist. The journalist comes and says, don't you know that you are lighting a candle here, but it won't change anything, it won't change their minds. You come here every day and light up candles for nothing. The man replies, I know that lighting candles here won't change them or what's happening. I'm lighting candles here so they don't change me. He is actually lighting it for himself. He is admonishing himself, teaching himself. I shared this on my social media account because it made me look at the issue again. I said, I also have a candle. I have many friends in the press. I grew up with this story. I'm involved in the issue. I've taken my child from tunnels to the press. Let them have a candle of their own, learn, know, and not forget. So, in some way, when faced with things that could change or disrupt their mindset, when confronted with perception operations, let them know what happens. I wrote that book only for this reason. I didn't write it to sell or to be read. I'm writing so that one day, if there's no place called Gaza, people can see and know what happened here street by street, a memoir. If there won't be a place called Gaza a century from now, because we've always lost ground on this every year. What have the children of Gaza experienced? So where were the bodies hidden? The same things happened today. That scene I encountered in Haifa really made me go, wow. For instance, everyone there, they threatened journalists yesterday. Journalists have faced similar things before. Israel is very strategic about these matters when you report the news. They have a good cop and a bad cop. So while someone is humiliating you, treating you harshly, another Israeli security official or officer might come and say, sorry, our colleagues are on edge. This approach towards you isn't right. We'll take care of it, or something like that. If you're inexperienced in the field, you might think, wow, they're so elegant. But that's a deliberate move too. During that time, they're essentially telling you, as a journalist, you'll report it this way, not that way. So you got your press pass. Israel's operations are very sophisticated, both in war and managing media perception. Look, they said there were tunnels under the Gaza Al-Shifa hospital, right? For example, they said there was a headquarters. Hamas said, come and see if you like. There is none. There is no tunnel that we know of. We didn't build a tunnel and we don't use it as a headquarters. Send the international authorities to look at it, they said. Netanyahu shared this on his Twitter account. And Ehud Barak gave an interview to Christiane Amanpour. I don't know if you saw it. In that interview, he says, the former Prime Minister of Israel, when we ruled Gaza, they built a bunker and a headquarters under the Al-Shifa hospital. In other words, they knew it themselves, but they told the whole world as if Hamas dug a tunnel there. They are still digging. It turns out that Israel built a bunker, headquarters, military center, etc. under the hospital. This means that Israel is doing these things on its own, so they tell the world as if they were doing it. Ehud Barak said to Christiane Amanpour, I will include that in today's news, I will show it. Now globally, I greet them all. In Western societies, the United States, God bless them. Look, organizing protests in Turkey is not easy. Why? because the government's position is clear, we go out and hold a demonstration in support of Palestine. This is valuable, but it alone doesn't signify much. But within Western societies where issues like you're anti-Semitic and other things are greatly emphasized, for people to come out and say, no, you are currently massacring Gaza and it has nothing to do with other issues, even risking losing their jobs for important artists, models, or whoever speaks out, even risking their jobs, the messages and emails they receive, and yet they come out and say, human dignity is being violated here for a minute. A community, irrespective of their religion, language, or sect, is being brutally murdered. Thousands of children are being killed. That's a highly valuable thing. And it will definitely have an impact in the process. Despite its desire to control the entire media, Israel has faced the reaction of the people of the world, all the conscientious people of the world, and it has failed. In other words, it failed to achieve what it wanted in that sense. No matter what it tried to do, everyone stopped and said no. Even those who were right in the first days said, wait a minute, what you are doing here is not working. They always talk about October 7th. I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but I've said it everywhere I've been. I've tried to explain it. If you start this issue with October 7th as the date, you'll fall into an absurd manipulation. You will reach an absurd conclusion. This is an issue that goes back decades. People have a bond with the land. This issue has become the issue of the grandfathers, fathers, children, and grandchildren of the people whose connection with the land you have severed. And it is the issue of the children of all Palestinian cities, one by one, whose arms you break, whose arms you kill, whose bodies you mutilate, whose houses you concretize, whose houses you demolish, whose houses you destroy, whose houses you loot, whose houses you deprive of all their rights, whose bank accounts you freeze and steal, whose businesses you close, whose businesses you close, whose businesses you force them to leave with tax fines, whose houses you don't even allow to be demolished, but whose houses you allow a Jewish settler next door to rebuild. And it is an issue that has been passed down from generation to generation. So you built something in very unhealthy conditions, oppressing, persecuting, killing, and breaking arms every day. The streets were silent. For example, Jerusalem. Look, one of our things is this. We're going to Jerusalem. Everyone. They are waiting to see what will happen in Jerusalem. Nothing will happen in Jerusalem. It is not possible for anything to happen in Jerusalem. It is not easy. For those who don't know the place, you expect a big demonstration after the Friday prayers. No, I mean, everyone there has broken arms, wings, and legs. They cannot move. There are cameras everywhere. If they utter a sentence, they pay a very heavy price for it. It is even strategically wrong. Why? Israel is already looking for an excuse. There is a man's house there. He is looking for an excuse to evacuate it and give it to a settler, and you are giving that excuse. Therefore, this is a war of nerves at the same time. Look, I was in Egypt once. They were evacuating Rabat Square, Adavieh Square. The night before the evacuation, we were chatting with Issam Arian, Mohammed Biltachi, Chihat Haddad inside the mosque. We also did an interview with Biltachi. I said, what will you do tomorrow when the Egyptian army comes? He said, we will be martyrs. So I went on a broadcast and said, if the upper mind of a movement answers the question, what will you do? We will be martyrs. If he answers the question, get well soon, I said. So there is no strategy here anymore. Why? Because he has been drawn into the fight. He has suffocated the higher mind. He is in his emotions. There is no way out for him. And okay, maybe you can leave artifacts from generation to generation, but here they are drowning us in crises. I am saying this especially for the Palestinian people. I mean for the people there. I mean going out on the streets, shouting is one of the weakest things we can do. When we can't fix it with our hands, when we can't fix it with our tongues, we do it from our hearts. We can do it here because it is easy for us. In the West they can and do it a little more difficult. When they do it in Palestine, it is strategically problematic. Their houses can be occupied, their bank accounts can be frozen, they can be refused even more because Israel is still the center of power. That's why the streets were like this in Jerusalem. What about the streets of the West Bank? We have a problem there too. What kind of a problem do we have? By the way, those who follow the Palestinian issue, it is a very psychologically very difficult issue. I think it is not possible to live there and have a normal psychology. That's why you didn't expect the things you expect from normal people. Not from Gaza, not from the West Bank, not from Jerusalem. When I first interviewed Khaled Mashal in Qatar right after this incident, I said that this is an attack. This is an attack in which civilians were killed, and it is now being talked about all over the world as a terrorist attack. I asked a question like, didn't this action harm Hamas? Didn't it harm your brother-in-law in Palestine? He said, Mehmet Akif, you've been to Gaza so many times. You go here and there. You have many Palestinian friends. You know the issue. Did you start interpreting this issue from a comfortable space in Istanbul, sitting in your suit? He said, let me tell you from beginning to end what we went through and how we got to this point. We are talking about the interview. First we talked, we had a little chat, yes. For us, Where we sit, now there are such people on Twitter. I mean, Hamas has done this, they have done that. They even make some comparisons. They make stupid comparisons. My friend, wait a minute. One, Palestinian lands are being occupied every day, every year. There is a state with unclear borders. And in doing so, it completely violates international law. It also violates international law in international waters. It does not recognize and ignore the resolutions of the conventions. It does not care when it uses phosphorus bombs, even if it commits a crime according to the International Criminal Court, the Israeli hospital. Look, even America can't do this, you know? They bombed all the hospitals. They hit the Al Ahli hospital. Everyone was up in an uproar. Then they continued. They hit dozens of hospitals. We're used to it, so no one says anything. Israel hitting a hospital has become as normal for all of us as Israel hitting a house, as Israel hitting a civilian house, as Israel hitting the Al-Qassam headquarters. It has nothing to do with the International Criminal Court. It does not recognize international law. It does not recognize the resolutions of the unions. They say they will use phosphorus bombs. They admitted to using them in previous wars. They used it again. They will confess again. Is there any punishment? No. They will use cluster bombs? No. I don't know if they used chemical weapons. But if they did, no one would go to Israel. They didn't let him in. That's it. He's an American child in a spoiled Middle East. I thought it was an act. I even reported it to our embassy. The flood authorities, the security forces, they were also disturbed. They asked us to change the hotel. They said, change the hotel we found so that we don't have a problem. We are broadcasting. We speak Turkish. Strangely, first a woman, then a man. He doesn't speak Turkish, but he seems to understand what we are doing, what we are saying. He attacked us. She intervened. Then the man intervened. There were swear words, insults. He tried to block our camera. What he was trying to do was to gather the crowd there. He was shouting a lot, and I thought that there might be something provocative, so I ended the broadcast after a while and went to the hotel. They tried to gather people around us by saying these things. These people are against Israel. These people support terrorism. These people are doing this. These people are doing that. So it was one of the tense moments. But I can say this. I mean, this is also the case with rocket attacks. When I look, I see everyone lying on the ground, sirens going off, etc. One of the good things, one of the smart things that Israel did there was to gather all the world media with Israel and distract us with little things. They distracted us with these things. I mean, of course, our journalist friends will report when a rocket falls near them. I would do the same if it were me. This is a very normal thing. Of course, when the sirens go off on TV, it's a news story. And when we are on air, the sirens go off and we will report on it, of course. Sure, so the problem where we stand is, well, there might be a problem with the strategy here just being a Western city or being a name in the West to report from Palestinian territories street by street. Maybe pressuring Egypt a bit and reporting about the aid and what's happening there from the comfort of Rafah, reporting about what's happening in Gaza. But think about it, you can't even report what's happening in Gaza, and that's from a Muslim country like Egypt. We end up having to report from Israel because they don't allow it. So it's a story that we lost the war in ourselves first, the story that we lost it in ourselves, unfortunately. So that's what we will do when we go there as journalists. I mean, all our colleagues are trying to do their job in the best way possible, but that's what they will do here. Maybe force the other side, Rafah. Still pass, still can't go. We are still trying and we cannot go. So we need to go to Gaza and explain what is happening in Gaza. There is nothing in Israel. By the way, those who follow the Palestinian issue, it is a very psychologically very difficult issue. I mean, I think it is not possible to live there and have a normal psychology.
Make more meals for less with Dunnes Stores, where you'll save in the aisle with